the mic over to the mayor of our city. Here you go.
Thank you very much. Sorry I'm late. Welcome. I'm glad you're for this warm welcome. Hi, Melly. I see all these smiling faces. Marshall Scott, how are you?
Just fine, sir.
Every time I wonder why I took this job, I go to Marshall and he tells me, I don't know either. So, I guess I'm here to tell you all about the city. I could talk to you about for 5 or 6 hours about what's going on in the city. As many of you may know, I was recently elected to the city council, and then very soon after that elected by the council as mayor. I represent District 3, which is the district in the east side of town, so there's a lot of development there. Last night, just to report to you, we held interviews for the Planning Commission. We had 13 people apply. It was a terrific group. By the way, how long do I have to talk?
You have about 30.
Okay, all right. And so we did something kind of new and different. For the first time ever, I consulted with the chairman of the Planning Commission about the people that the council might want to appoint. So that's one of the things, because I was on the Planning Commission. I understood, you know, and that the Planning Commission really is probably the most direct commission to affect real estate and real estate values in the city. It may be the most important commission we have. It may even be more important in the final analysis for the future of the city than the city council. So Melly and I discussed how we would choose them. So I think it's for the first time ever in this city history that we picked, I believe we picked people last night. I don't know who we picked because of the balloting measure or system that Melly and I came up with, to rank people by their qualifications as opposed to who they knew and what their political aspirations were. So I believe we will have probably the most qualified planning commission this city's ever seen. And when we really don't know who they are until the votes are tabulated. So there were, in the past it was kind of like my friend, your friend, whoever you knew, and then they would trade it off, and you ended up with some people who were good intentioned people maybe, but they were not always the most qualified. So I believe, and in that area, in those discussions, there was a young man who most people would probably deem as not qualified. But there was one council member who only answers one question, or asks one question, and it's, what area do you think needs the most attention in terms of planning? And he's hoping for them to say Edgemont. But it isn't this young man was being kind of looked on by as maybe not that qualified. And when he asked that question, the young man said, District 3. And the councilman that was asking the question said, no, you know, I'm talking about an area that's all problematic and all this and all that. And he was trying to edge him to the Edgemont. And so I just kind of interrupted, which I do a lot, and said, you know, young man, you're the 13th person we've interviewed, and it's the 13th time I've heard that question. And everyone says Edgemont, Sunnymead, but you are the only person who has answered the question correctly. It is District 3, because a planning commission's function is to plan undeveloped land. Edgemont needs redevelopment, not development. So this young 20-year-old man who came to apply for the planning commission, and by the way, Marshall, you'll vouch for me, it's the first time that we interviewed everybody who applied.
Right, it's the first time.
Because if you apply, you deserve an interview.
In
So,
the past, each council person picked their own person. And whoever he was, whoever she was, regardless of the qualifications, whatever, and you kind of got, we've had a hodgepodge over the years.
right, exactly. And so now, you know, the bottom line was, the reason I tell this story is that District 3 is the future of development in this city because it has the most undeveloped land, and it is the district that we should be the most concerned about. So I assume that many of you in here do residential, many of you do commercial and real estate, so it has it all to offer. There's infill for residential, there's, the more residential comes, the more opportunities for retail. And then there's also the World Logistics Center that's being proposed. The medical corridor is there. And so District 3 is where all the action is. It also happens to be the district where it has the least infrastructure. So we have not, the infrastructure that is really poorly lacking in that district. So the infrastructure will, to a large degree, determine the amount of development and what types of development, because the city really isn't in a financial situation to do that development. So, the city prepares talking points. Marshall knows this. Here it is right here. I brought some of them here, so if anybody's interested in them, I wouldn't bore you with them, because the facts are the facts. You can't do infrastructure without money, and the city doesn't have any money to spare. And that's why the next topic I wanted to talk to you about, the fiscal situation of the city, is important to you. Because in the real estate business, the development in the East End or any portion of the city will be directly proportional to the amount of the city's ability to pay for that infrastructure. So the city, just to give it to you in a nutshell, is in a pretty bad financial situation. We really are taking a very tight look at it just in the nick of time. We have, just to give you an idea of what's going on, we had a study session yesterday, day before yesterday, and we had a very decent presentation. I mean, it was not decent, it was great, by Rick Tigert, the finance director. There are a few people in this city staff that are really dedicated, straight on, and intelligent, and we're blessed to have, and Rick Tigert is one of them. So for the first time ever, we're going to take all of, in a government accounting, there's the general fund, and then there's all these government funds. And we will establish a proper and prudent reserve in those government funds, and then we will take all of the excess reserve to the general fund reserve, so that the citizens of the community will, for the first time, know what is our real bank account. It won't be hidden down in all of these accrued potential future expenses that were nobody ever intended to spend. So it really comes down to this. There's about $5 million in reserves in those accounts that can be pulled back into the general fund account, into the general fund reserve. That will leave the city with approximately $33 million in reserves. In order to operate this city, because you have to have payroll and everything that needs to be paid for all of the employees, and property taxes and things don't all come in at the beginning of the year, or they don't come in 12 equal installments. You need about $15 million to just cash flow, operate the city, meet your obligations, pay the payroll. So if you do the math, if 15 million from 30 million is 15 million, so it leaves you approximately 15 to 18 million in reserves. The projected revenue for the city this year is, versus its expenses, would be about a $6.3 million deficit. We've come down from $14 million in deficits to about $6.3 million. Now that doesn't really include all the expenses, but those are what are operational expenses. So you can see that in 2 years or 3 years we will have taken all the usable reserves. And then we will be basically with a zero bank account, and we'll still be running a deficit if we don't do something. So this council has directed the city manager to balance the budget this year. And we will be able to do that. There will be some cuts. There is no question of that. There's no other way of doing it. It's just like running this business right here, and it's like running your household, and it's been just put off too long. But one of the reasons we're running a structural deficit is because the sheriff's department, we contract with the largest single city in the state of California without its own police department. Now the sheriff's department has kind of a you take it or leave it attitude. So they have not controlled their expenses on their end, and they're just passing them down to the contract cities. So they have told us that there will be to expect a 5% increase. To put this all into perspective, you have about an $80 million general fund. 75% of the expenses of that $80 million are public safety, fire and police. If they're rising at 5% and revenue is rising at 2%, you can see it's not going to work. So if we don't do something now, we might as well just hand the keys to the city and the checkbook over to the sheriff, let him write the checks until they start bouncing, then hand the keys back to us. And that's pretty much the analogy that will happen. So we are going to have to, for the first time, cut actual public safety. And and that will be a approximate $2 million cut. We won't cut in terms of what we're spending, we just will not spend any more. So the budget will remain the same for public safety, but because he is increasing the cost by 5%, there'll be 5% less spent, or 5% less police officers and time charged to us. So that is going to be a challenge, how we get through the next couple of years with a, and we've got crime down to a manageable rate, but it's never a good rate unless it's zero. If you're mugged and it's the only mugging that year, that's important to you. So 0 is the number you want to achieve. There's no acceptable level of crime, but we're going to have to just make do. Now, we don't have a dang thing to say about it. We can't say to the sheriff, and I've had this conversation with him, you can't say to him, Sheriff, there hasn't been a single administrative non-sworn person fired or let go or pay cut in this department since you've been here. Can we just cut a few secretaries out and clerks and keep the deputies on the road? And he says, it's my department, you don't have anything to say about it, we'll do it our way. And I have a formula. You have X number of deputies, you have X number of sergeants, X number of lieutenants, X number of captains, X number of secretaries, X number of clerks, and that's the way it is. You don't like it, go somewhere else. So we're negotiating, if you can call it that, because he won't negotiate, and trying to have something to say about our police department. So I'm just warning you, you're probably going to hear about it. My solution to it is this. I have contacted Bill Bratton. He'll be here next month to meet with me. And we will form a JPA, Joint Powers Authority, and it will be called the Inland Cities Policing Authority. And we will hire one chief, one set of supervisors. We'll have one SWAT team, if you want to call it, one gang team, and we'll do it for 6 cities. We already have 3 cities. I've already met with the mayors of 2 cities, so that will be 3 cities that would join in this. So you say, well, how will that save money? Well, the governor gave us that idea, how to do that, and cities across the state are doing this now. In fact, there are 4 cities in the high desert doing it in San Bernardino County right now, because the legacy costs will not be there, because the retirement for new employees is different than employees that have been there before. So currently, right now, we're paying, when everyone is cutting, the county gave the sheriff's department a 6% raise. And then they have legacy costs for their retirement across the board. And so, as the CalPERS has told us, we're going to have our contribution in order to make the fund flush is going to start to increase. Well, the county will just pass that on to us. So what the county is doing right now is kind of a game. They take the new employees in with the cheap legacy cost, and they keep them in the unincorporated areas. They take the old guys that have a higher retirement cost, and they put them out to the contract cities. So they're lowering their legacy cost on our back. But if we form the JPA, we will have a new police department with no legacy costs to be worrying about. We could pay a higher wage because we'll pay lower retirement costs, and because of the economy of scale, we will have a lower police cost. If we don't think 5 years out, the sheriff will basically bankrupt our city. The sheriff will blame the supervisors. It's them that they decided to give my employees 6%. I really don't care who gets the blame on their end. The bottom line is that I don't want it passed down to our city. So we have to do something, and that's the plan I have so far. We'll form a JPA. We will be the lead city, we'll be the big dog, and for the first time, Moreno Valley will have something to say about what is spent in its own police department and its own public safety. And they will have something to say about how we staff the police department. And we will be in control of our destiny, as opposed to the sheriff and the board of supervisors telling us what public safety is going to cost. Put the numbers into perspective. 75% of our general fund expense is public safety. So most of what the city spends is on police and fire. And we don't have our own fire department, but first things first, we'll get, the JPA could do fire protection next if it becomes successful. And Bill Bratton, in case you don't know it, is the guy who cleaned up New York, he cleaned up Philadelphia, he cleaned up Los Angeles. He is, and they are doing this. They tell me there's kind of a bumper business in their consulting business for cities, contract cities, who are facing the same situation in other areas. It's not unique to this sheriff, by other contract cities. So I think we'll, for the first time, Moreno Valley will be strategically looking out 4 or 5 years instead of trying to look back and play firefighter and solve a problem in an emergency situation. That's what I'm trying to do right now, is to make the city strategically look at its finances, balance the budget, and then as revenues increase, we can adjust the spending. But let's stop spending more money than we're taking in. So that's kind of the...
When you say the sheriff, you're referring to Stan Sniff?
I am.
Okay.
And Stan is an excellent professional sheriff. He has provided very good service to the city. We are very lucky to have a high quality of police service that we have. It is not a question of Stan's professionalism. It's not a question of Stan, period. It's not a question of the service that we've gotten. And up until the last few years, this city has gotten a real bargain from the sheriff. But the problem is that they can't balance their budget on the back of ours when we're in the red, 6 or 7 million a year. It just won't work. So it's an unsustainable number. But I have nothing but the highest respect for Stan, and I endorse his candidacy for sheriff. But, you know, it's just like I have a style, he has a style. I went over and visited the San Bernardino sheriff, and you know, his approach is if you have these, they haven't raised in San Bernardino their cost to contract cities in 3 years because they know what conditions are. So the Board of Supervisors over there for the first time in 3 years raised the contract city rate by 2.5%, and at 2.5% raise for the first time in 3 years, they have cities going to try and break away and do a JPA. We have been having 2 and 3 and 4% raises all along, and now we're being told to hold on for a 5% raise. So it will only get worse because CalPERS will be asking each of the cities and counties to contribute more in their deficit reduction plan. And as that increases, those costs will be passed on to us. And they have 4,000 people working in the Sheriff's Department over there. So you can tell the scale. It's like an avalanche about ready to fall down on us. This is not about someone's decision at the Sheriff's Department to overcharge Moreno Valley. They charge every city the same. They have an issue, and they're solving it on someone on our back. We might do the same if we were in their position. That isn't the question. So the other thing is we talked about, Rick Tiger gave a very insightful report. And one of the things he did was he talked about, you know, the revenue sources. So he took an average home in our city. It was a $158,000 priced home. And we actually calculated what the property tax contribution for that one house was. Anybody care to guess what the city of Moreno Valley gets for a $150,000 house, Mel?
$500.
Anybody else? $164. So you can tell that we can't balance the budget on property tax because this city was formed after Prop 13. So cities like Riverside and that have the advantage of having those tax bases that were fully matured have a bigger tax base in terms of property tax than this city does. And right now, property tax isn't even the first largest it used to be. It's now not even the second, it's not even the third, it's approaching the fourth largest revenue source for the city. Sales tax is second, utility tax is first in the city.
Regarding the sales tax, with the Day Street division, most of retail from Moreno Valley is being sucked into Riverside jurisdiction. Is there any revenue sharing?
No.
So they get all of the money that we spend.
Right. And let me, while we're on that subject, you know, you're going to hear a lot about the JPA down here, March Joint, and how that can solve our tax base problem. It can't, and it won't, and we didn't really do a very good job defending ourselves in that area. So let me tell you why it won't. There's a very inequitable tax sharing agreement with the county. The JPA is the county. It's not the city of Riverside, it's not the city of Moreno Valley. So they've indebted the JPA for infrastructure, and all the infrastructure that's been put on is on the side, which Riverside will probably get. Then they did away with RDA, or redevelopment, so there's no vehicle for us to finance the infrastructure on our side. If they were to just give it to us today, we wouldn't have the money to do the infrastructure. Riverside will come out in it really great because everything is built out in their section. All the infrastructure is there. Drive down the freeway, you'll see all the buildings on their side. You won't see a single building on our side. You won't even see a street that's been improved. So, and the tax base, the incremental increase in taxes from what it was to what it is now on their side and our side will be used for 30 years to pay for the infrastructure that has occurred on the Riverside side. So even if we got it all, we wouldn't see a dime for 30 years. So somebody didn't do a very good job negotiating for us. It's almost as if we were on the side team of Riverside. That's why I am on the JPA. I thought I could do some good, but when I found out the situation, I'm not sure that I can do any good. I think it's too late. So you can't look at the JPA or March Life Care or any of that for any help. That's why we have to go back to the 3rd district and do the medical corridor in the 3rd district, where anything, the infrastructure is there now, and all the incremental increase in taxes will be ours. Now I want to bear in mind, sales tax is more important to us than property tax. So it used to be when you talked about incremental tax increase, it was property tax. That's not going to be the case anymore. We should be talking about incremental sales increase in, or incremental tax increase should be really considered mostly sales tax. That's where the money is to be made. So, you know, a lot of people, including myself at some point, you know, this is what I thought until I found it, until I negotiated.
So what the bottom line is, shop Moreno Valley. Don't go to Riverside.
Exactly. That's why it's so important for us to preserve additional land in the 3rd district for the auto mall. Because if we landlock the auto mall, and believe me, there are brands that will come here in the next 10 years that you haven't even heard the name of. See, 15 years ago, you didn't know what Hyundai was. 15 years ago, you didn't know what Kia was. Now they're name brands that we all drive.
And have to go to Riverside to get it.
Okay, so here's what's going to happen. The Indians, Tata, very large manufacturer, they have for years had plans to come here. It's the EPA that's kept their cars out. And so eventually they will break that barrier. They have dozens of products that can come here. China is producing cars now. In fact, most people don't know this. I was in the car business, so I know this, but most people don't know it. General Motors, there was a really revealing interview with the president of General Motors. If it wasn't for the cars that they're producing in China, they would be broke.
Right.
So China is going to become a major player. So there are brands that we haven't even heard of that will be proliferating our market. Hyundai will become the next Toyota, and then these brands will become the next Hyundai and Kia. Then there's no luxury car brand in the city, so if you have a Lincoln or a Cadillac or anything like that, you have to travel to Riverside. So the auto mall is very important, and that's why I was so demanding in getting that overlay with Melly's help. Melly and I were the 2 voices in the wilderness. Let's get an overlay and decide about the available land along that 60 and decide whether it should all be warehouses or whether or not there might be some other higher and best uses for that land. The overlay won't be binding on the city or the planning commission, but it will be an advisory tool where they can say, hey, look, at build out, there's going to be X number of rooftops, we're going to need X number of retail, we're going to need X number of commercial, industrial, And so that's what our need is, and now here's what our inventory is, and now we can match our need to our inventory, so we won't be switching land over in zoning uses that we're going to need 10 years from now. If you look at our city, it was a helter-skelter plan, zoning planning. You know, strip mall after strip mall after strip mall. Nobody ever took the 30,000-foot look at the city and said, what are we doing? And that's what Melanie and I are trying to accomplish. She is the chairman of the Planning Commission, and her and I had, and there are other members of this Planning Commission, the current one, that believe as we do, that we need to start strategically planning the land so that we achieve the highest and best use. When you're on the Planning Commission, you have a responsibility, and when you're on the City Council, you have a responsibility to the 200,000 people that live here. But you also have a responsibility to the 200,000 people who will move here in the next 30 years. That's what the general plan is all about. At build out, this city will be approximately 400,000. And when you're sitting on one of these boards, you're not only talking, you know, you hear, when you're on the Planning Commission, you hear the story all the time. And when I bought this house, there was this nice open field out there, and I expected it to look like that. And you know, I wouldn't have bought it if I knew you were going to put a doggone warehouse there. Okay, so, you know, we have that responsibility to look at that person and say, hey, that's what happened. But we also have the responsibility to look at the current owners of the house, and we have the responsibility to look at the future residents. And so that's what I really want to do, is get forward looking a little bit so that we don't keep doing this hodgepodge planning.
What about, instead of build out, redeveloping the areas that have been blighted for 10 plus years, like the old home base?
Love, you know, if you look at the city's economic development plan, which we've just finished, we've increased those to those kinds of projects. Edgemont's on it. And let me just address Edgemont, because, and I'll get to you. There's no redevelopment money. The city doesn't have the money to do it. There's no vehicle to do it right now. Hopefully the governor will give us a vehicle. I'm not certain that redevelopment was that good for us, because we wasted a lot of redevelopment money because we never had a plan. Had we used our redevelopment money wisely, we would have taken Edgemont out and put a nice face to our city on the 215. But we didn't use it wisely. You know, people who don't know me will know I tell the truth. I can't help it. I don't varnish it. I'm not a politician. I don't intend to run for nothing else. I'm only here to fix the city the best I can. I don't really care about, you know, if it hurts someone's feelings. But we have wasted money. We had a $60 million surplus in this city, and we basically, excuse the expression, pissed it away. We have nothing to show for it. Nothing.
Well, the Cardenas on Ironwood closed. Albertsons here in Reno Valley closed. The Ralph's up in Sunny Ranch is on the chopping block as well. We've had Stater Brothers approach us. I'm on the board for Sunnymead Ranch, and Stater Brothers came to us asking what we thought about them moving into our neighborhood. They didn't say where. I can only assume that's either the Ralph's or the Albertson location.
That I can tell you that isn't going to happen.
Okay.
And but I wish it would have, but it isn't. You know, the best example of poor planning is that
what's not going to happen? Stater Brothers moving in, or Ralph's leaving?
Well, I don't. Which one are you talking about?
The Ralph's in Sunnymead Ranch on Sunnymead Ranch Parkway.
Yeah, okay. But the one that just closed up there was
Albertsons on Pigeon Pass.
Yeah, Stater Brothers is not going into Albertsons at Pigeon Pass. I don't know about this one down here. Okay. But you know, right now, you know, if you look at that Postal Street up on Sunnymead, you know, it's just a terrible, that's the best example of the worst planning you could ever imagine. You got mixed use in there, you've got residential, they call it Paroleville. And, you know, they call that whole area the dead zone. Jesse Molina and I are walking to every business between Fredericks and Indian. They call that the dead zone. And, you know, it's pathetic. When we go to businesses, they have to come and unlock the door, many of them, because they're afraid to have their door open. I went into a driving school there, and the guy said, I said, your door is open. It's unusual. He said, yeah, I got a gun. I got a concealed gun. I have a gun, I leave the door open. So we're going to go into that area and try and clean it up. With the police and with the police department cutbacks that are going to occur, we are going to lose 9 officers this year. This is hard, but we are going to go in there and clean that area up. We're going to hit it with code enforcement fairly and evenly across the board. And we're going to do the broken window policy there. No law is too small to be obeyed. And then we have to deal with the homeless issue.
Yeah.
We don't have anything, you know, people say the police don't do anything with the homeless, but
They have no
there's
power.
not, what the heck do they, well, even if they did, they wouldn't, what would they do, short of shooting them? I mean, there's no place to take them. This city has, there's not even a Salvation Army shelter in this city. This is hard for you guys to believe. There's not even a pastors association in this city. I'm doing an organizational meeting to try and form a pastoral association so that we can make an inventory of all the nonprofit help that could be given, and then we can maybe start focusing and directing it so that the police department has some alternative for those people.
Well, you guys gotta make a tent city or something, because that's our main boulevard, we've got 2 of them that I know of.
Yeah, well, listen,
And it's like,
you're
people
dead
in
right.
Alliance are going, what's this?
No,
And they
look,
wanna move here?
they spent $14.5 million broadening the street, turning it into a freeway, making it the least retailable area in the
Yep.
world. And they didn't even solve the major problem.
Yeah.
So the bottom line is that that was just somebody's pet project. They thought it was a great idea, but it was their idea, but they weren't a city planner and there was no real city planning going behind it.
Right.
So we've got a beautiful looking boulevard that's way too wide, it's not pedestrian
It has
helpful.
roses that need to be trimmed.
And if you talk to any of the retail businesses there, the widening and the beautification they love, but it has harmed their businesses. Gas stations on the boulevard's volume has dropped by 30% and never recovered.
Restaurants?
Jack in the
Yep.
Box, suffered a
Yeah.
lot.
So it was just a case of a great idea, but just not properly executed.
I worked with Skechers and some of their upper executives, and I couldn't get one to move to Moreno Valley. And I have my office here for 18 years, and I believe in Moreno Valley, but they were willing to go everywhere but Moreno Valley.
Right.
And I think over the years that I've lived here and had my business here, that we get hounded in the press and we get really bad press all the way around. But the issue is the city has never taken that on.
Yes, they have.
Well, okay.
You haven't been in one of my city council meetings. There isn't a meeting that I don't take Laura Hines on. And let me tell you where we are in
Let me
that.
finish, and
Go ahead.
then you can do that. So here's the thing. Out of 20 years living here, they haven't really taken it on. Everybody said they've taken it on and they've wanted to do this, and I've heard it from city council after city council, planning commissions that didn't. We're gonna let this big retailer move here because it's not enough tax dollars, when there are tax dollars coming in by the employees working here. It's something that I think that I'm hearing lots of, well, this is wrong and this is wrong. But we gotta make what's right, and we gotta change that image.
Well, if you
Before
look
we
at,
change the image, we gotta change the image before we're gonna get those people walking in the doors going, I wanna live in Moreno Valley, and yeah, it's got this.
if you look at my address to the city when I was being sworn in, and it was my swearing in and swearing at ceremony, because many people were swearing at me. If you look at it, that's exactly what I said. We need to concentrate on what we can agree on and put these divisions aside. And we'll resolve those at a slower pace. But what needs to be done and what we can all agree on, we need to do. That's why I formed a mayor's it's a mayor's committee for increasing graduation rates. The reason they won't come here is because they have to put their children in school here, and the graduation rate in this city is 69%. It's unacceptable. And I don't want to lose point of the press enterprise, because that's a very important point that you bring up. But, so I have formed this committee. Dr. White is on it. Ken Young, the superintendent of the county, is going to be on it. And we're going to attack this problem in a very vicious manner. You know, General Patton one time said, a bad plan a very bad plan, aggressively pursued, is better than no plan. So this is the plan, and it's a good plan. I don't think it's a bad plan, but we're going to aggressively pursue it. AVID, I don't know if you know what AVID is, but it's a program that's in some schools in Moreno Valley. They've concentrated at the high school level. Well, gee whiz, that's not where the problem starts. It's at the elementary level. So the city is going to be the focus and the primary push to put AVID into the elementary schools. And this is very important for you guys. I'm trying to find a way to do this because it's going to affect you. I want to increase the diff, a small amount, to augment the school district's AVID program so that every elementary student is involved in AVID. In 12 years, we will not have a 69% graduation rate if we did nothing else but put in AVID. Now, we've got it in every school, but it's 300 or 400 students, but there are thousands of students in the school that don't have it. I want to illustrate the point. I went to Vista del Lago to a parent-teacher meeting. 5 parents showed up, 10 students. I went to a Moreno Elementary activity the following week. 200 or 300 parents showed up. So when you have young children, you have the parents involved. And what we need to do with AVID is not only teach the child how to study, but teach the parent how to get the child to study, to build the self-esteem necessary to do that. So that's why we've attacked this problem in this city backwards. We're trying to change the number at the top so that we look good. And we're ignoring the fact that there are thousands of students just like the ones we're trying to solve coming through the system. So the AVID is a key part of what I want to do in the city. And if I do nothing else, that will be enough to change the lives of these children. The reason I think DIF can do it is because without a skilled workforce, we're never going to grow. And we're never going to have a skilled workforce if we don't get our kids through school so they can get meaningful employment. So, Vista del Lago has a medical program up there, vocational. It has a 100% graduation rate. What's the lesson? Jesus, take that model and move it through every school. And the reason is that if you give one of these kids who is, you hear the story at the Student of the Month thing. Oh, gee whiz, this is George Smith. He was a terrible student. He was on the verge of being in jail. He comes from a horrible family. His mother's drug addicted. His father ran off. And George is now a 4-point student. So George comes up and he says to you, and basically you hear it time and time again. He knows exactly the day it happened, he knows the time, he knows exactly what was said to him, and he knows exactly who said it. Coach so-and-so proved to me that I could do this. And that's what turned my life around. That's a mentor colliding with a student. You don't plan who your mentors are, they find you, you find them. So we need to create more opportunities for mentoring at that end of the deal. So that's why it'll be a 2-pronged effort with Dr. White and Kenya. And it's their committee to form, and we're just there to support it. But the city, it's not a city responsibility education. It really isn't. So this is unusual for us. Ken Young says you'll be a pioneer. It would be great for the city of Moreno Valley to one time be #1 in something besides dropouts. So that's why this is important. So the diff, if we could take this little bit of diff and put it into this AVID, because AVID is cheap. It's, $5,000 to $10,000 a year in every school. And we make this difference, a long-lasting difference in this community. And it would be done on the back of development. And it's a small price to pay. And that's what I want to do. And then I want to get a Chamber of Commerce that works. And get this Chamber of Commerce adequately funded and get adequately directed to go out and create mentoring programs so that we have more collisions of mentors and students at the level, at the high school and junior high level, introducing them to businesses like this, introducing them to the opportunities that they can have. Going back to that medical program. If you are a kid who is barely making it, barely staying in school, you do not think that you can strive to be a doctor. But you might be able to think that it's possible to become an EMT. And once you have gotten your 3-point or 4-point average and you've got EMT in sight, you might think you could be a physician's assistant. And once you get that in your sight, you might think you could be a doctor. So that's why the education is important. In fact, I want to answer, just finish up on your press enterprise. I take Laura Hines on at every opportunity. This is a biased newspaper. It's biased in 8 ways. If you listen to the study session I had the other day, I told her the 8 forms of bias in a newspaper, and I showed her examples of every single one of them that they have done to this city. It is systematic, it's their editorial board, it is intentional.
Since 1971, it's town.
They want to destroy this town. They want this city to not, I want this city to be a city with a future. They want it to be a city with no future. It's just purely that. I pointed out to her yesterday, Wednesday, days are running together, Tuesday, I pointed out to her that I ran Student of the Month in their archive. There was a nice, beautiful story about Menifee Student of the Month, pictures of all of them. Nice, beautiful one for Lake Elsinore, Riverside, Corona. There wasn't a single Student of the Month story about Moreno Valley. Not a single one. See, that is bias by omission. They make the choice what stories to run. They are biased by omitting our students. Are we to believe there's not a single Student of the Month in this town? No. So yes, I am taking them on, and I am taking them on at great risk, but I don't care. I told her in last Tuesday's meeting, I have declared war on the press enterprise.
Yeah. But you
Because
know,
they have declared war on us.
we can stand up to that too, because we pay for advertising in those.
Well, let me tell you what I did. This city no longer spends one dime in the press enterprise.
And we have all of the-
All of our legal notices are now in the Daily Bulletin.
Yeah.
We needed to have an attorney, a city attorney, who would back that position. Before we didn't have it, we do now. It's one of the reasons that we need new blood in the city. We need to stop doing what we've been doing for 18 years and start doing what we should be doing.
What works?
Okay, so I am going to take her on. And you guys can take her on by canceling your subscription.
Absolutely.
Amen.
The city doesn't even get it, subscribe to the paper anymore.
Tell them why too. Read it online.
Exactly. They think they're making money by having a scandal sheet at our expense. We need to show them that at their expense, they're doing this.
Yeah.
So, not only should I fully endorse your position of shopping Moval, stop spending money in the press enterprise. And I refer to it now as the depressed enterprise. Seriously, I am going to take them on at every opportunity. You know, they had 1 year ago, I pointed out to her in the study session. This is your article a year ago about the World Logistics Center. It says John Husing, an expert that you've always agreed with, it says up there that he overstated the job numbers. It said they don't jive. That's the headline. This is biased by headline. So then they said, we went to a group called the Beacon Group, and they said, in general, Husing is, it's not 23,000 jobs, it's only 13,000 new jobs. Okay? So the city hired Beacon, the company that they said was the expert. Beacon did the full analysis, and they not only confirmed Husing's numbers, but they said there were even more. The headline says, economist gives report on logistics center.
What did he do?
It should have said, We were wrong, they were right, the numbers are bigger.
Yep.
It should have said, it could have said, and be more honest, Beacon confirms Husing's numbers.
Yeah.
But no, it didn't say that. So that's bias by headline. Then bias by picture choice. There was a story, and I pointed out to her, you really need to watch. I know it's boring, and I know it's terrible, and I know it seems like it's all about me, but it's not about me. I just happen to be the vehicle. So here's the story looking forward in January. It said, here's what's going to happen in all the cities. Riverside's going to look at their red lights deal. They're going to have the Rubidoux Cross problem to resolve. They got nice buildings. They show a sky, scene of the skyline here. Menifee, they had similar stories. You know, Corona's going to build an equestrian center. They're going to have to close their budget gap. Blah, 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 blah. You know what it said about Moreno Valley? Moreno Valley's got a big warehouse debate. That's it. That's all it said. We're more than warehouses. Going to your point. If you agree for warehouses or you disagree, okay, but this city can't live or die about a debate of warehouses while we're going broke, while our kids aren't graduating. There's going to be warehouses or they're not. Get over it. That's not what's going to make this city live or die. But that paper wants you to think it's all about warehouses. And not only warehouses, Edo Benzivi. Because when you look at the picture, instead of the cross and the skyscape for our city, it was a picture of Edo Benzivi. The city doesn't run around Edo Benzivi. He's a good man. He's put a lot of money in this city. We should be thankful that he's there trying to do it. He's the only one. But it isn't about Edo Benzivi. This is about 200,000 people living in a community that has serious problems and they need to be solved, and we can't be distracted by this debate. So that is bias by picture choice. Trust me, I know what bias is, and I'm calling it out at every damn opportunity. And I told her, get your thumbs on that little BlackBerry of yours and start tweeting. You will notice that she didn't tweet. You will notice there wasn't even a story about that. Till 2 or 3 days it starts dribbling out. They just don't know how to take me.
Have you had a chance to talk to their editorial board?
I've refused. They have been asking me to talk to them, and I wrote them a letter and I said, listen, I like it the way it is. It's point, counterpoint. You do your best to take us down, I'll do my best to take you down, we'll let the people decide. So he's been writing me every day. You can look on my phone right now. He's been calling me. He's offered me 600 paid words. No, I won't dignify your damn paper by getting in there and defending my city. I shouldn't have to defend it. You should report it fairly. I will not dignify it. I will not speak to him. He has contacted me 4 times. I have told him I am perfectly satisfied with it the way it is. I believe in an intellectual arena, I will win. This city just needs to stop being a damn doormat. You know, and I would like to have us all cancel our subscriptions. That's my next rev up.
Done.
And the next thing we're going to talk about is stop advertising in it.
Done.
Until they get the message. We're not asking for preferential treatment, we're just asking for fair treatment. So, you know, it's just an amazing thing to me that what's going on. It's a systematic editorial policy. That's what I told him in the letter. It has nothing to do with Laura Hine. She's privately told me they'll fire her if she ever write anything good about us. I offered her a glass of water at a meeting. She said she'd be fired if she took anything from Moreno Valley. At the last mayor's report to the city, Richard Stewart gave it, she sat in another room and watched on TV because she wouldn't even pay, they wouldn't allow us to give her a comp ticket to come in. So it is a systematic, deliberate attempt to harm our city and our children. So I could talk here all day, so tell me when you've heard enough.
I have one more question.
Why 8 less police on our force?
Pardon?
Why, you said there was going to be 8 less law enforcement?
Well, I answered that earlier because the sheriff is raising the amount of the contract to us. And his contract is in excess of $40 million a year.
So none of this rolls back to AB 109?
It does.
All rolls back to
It all goes back to it.
So
And
why
a
isn't
year
the
ago
city
I
going
went-
to the state?
Pardon?
Why isn't the city going to the state? Because that's really where everything rolled down from is AB 109. And I agree with you. I don't like it. I think it was dumb when we did it. But the cities have to, and the counties have to stand up and say, hey, we're not going to be your whipping boy anymore. And
Well, let me tell you what went on. When I was running for this office, I went to the city and I said, hey, what about AB 109? I understand from Amber Crothers, who's on our commission and a probation officer, that this is going to hit us like an avalanche. And you know what the sheriff's response was? We got it handled. Don't worry about it. The city's response was, you don't know what you're talking about. We know. Well, they didn't know. And it has hit us. And almost every crime that we see on the daily crime log can be attributed to AB 109. So it's just a fact of life. But somebody asked this question in the meeting, in the study session, and my response was this. You know, the sheriff needs to understand something, that if we follow his plan, and when I do that, I'm not doing it demeaningly to Stan, it's not his plan, it's the county's plan. We'll have 2 kinds of employees left here if we don't cut public safety. Firemen and policemen, and there'll be no one else. Because all the cuts to employment in this city have come at the cost of the city workers, not the police and the fire. So we have cut the city staff down to almost nothing. There are people that are working Saturdays and Sundays. There are a few, you know, you have to understand, you have some dedicated city employees. You go in that city hall on Saturday and Sunday and you will find people working because they can't get their job done Monday through Thursday. You know, it's not what you think. There are, you know, listen, in the private sector, we know there are people who work for us. There's a certain segment of them, and I always describe them as there are people who quit and leave and people who quit and stay.
Yes. We
So
have some.
we have quit and stays at the city just like anybody else. But there are a lot of people who are dedicated, hard-working people. And you need to know that. And they're not all police and fire. They're the guys that fix your street lights, fix your traffic lights, the guys who fill the potholes. These are dedicated people. They're just as important to this city as any other employee. And every cut in this city has come at their expense. So it's time to kind of spread that out a little bit. Otherwise, there will only be 2 kinds of city employees, policemen and firemen.
You know, I've said this before at this meeting, and I'll say it again. Now, you are obviously very passionate and very articulate, and you have an agenda. You are the mayor, but you're not going to be, unless things change, you're not going to be the mayor very long.
Well,
Because
that's why we want this charter amendment.
Exactly. So, what is the status of that, and how long will you be mayor, or in 8 more months are we going to have the next city council person come up to be mayor?
That's why
with
we're-
a different agenda and a different.
That's why we're in the mess we're in. And I'll be really blunt with you. This is how it works. You hire a city manager in this city because we're a general law city. He spends his entire waking day trying to figure out how to keep the 3-vote majority separated. Because he knows if there's no majority on the council, he has a job and he can lay back. You know, it's an interesting thing as mayor, I come to work every day. I spend 16 hours a day or 12 hours a day working there because I've come from the auto industry. That's not unusual. And now all of a sudden people in the senior staff show up to work. First week I was there, I couldn't find anybody. And Thursday was the new Friday.
Yep.
So you need adult supervision in the room.
That's a good one, because that's true. Very, very true.
So just being there every day has helped.
Yeah.
I could be a potted plant and I would have helped. when there's been some potted plants doing this. So the 1 year thing is stupid. It just keeps, that's, you know, I love the press enterprise. Oh, they shouldn't be a charter city. Well, Riverside's a charter city. It was a charter city in 1929. I pointed this out to Laura. See, Laura doesn't get an easy ride with me. I've read her the article.
Poor old Laura's the book.
Yeah, she is. She's the one that, but listen, I don't have any sympathy for her because she knows she's working for a bad paper and she chooses to work for it. She made that decision. If she doesn't like it, she should quit. And because she stays, that tells you the price of her integrity. It's her paycheck. Whatever her paycheck is, that's her price of her integrity. I have no sympathy for it. So, bottom line is, we need to get this charter in. The first charter committee is coming up in March 27th. I am doing it with Richard Stewart. And the reason I picked Richard Stewart on this committee is because he is against the charter. This has been a really nice duck and cover game. You become the mayor, you cause all kinds of havoc, and then you duck out for a while, then you come back. And it's too easy. What we need is to elect a full-time 4-year mayor, citywide, and when he doesn't do the job, fire his ass. You see, you can't fire your city manager. This city, none of you. This city's being run by a city manager. It's not being run by the mayor. It's not being run by the council. If you think it is, you're kidding yourself. The only reason that I'm having any success is that I have a 3-vote majority most of the time. And until, when I lose the 3-vote majority, and believe me, there are people trying to make that happen right now as we speak. They're plotting right now to do it. When I lose the 3-vote majority, it's back to the way we were. And the only way to fix that and not have it incumbent on me is to have the charter and have a full elected, have something to say. You know, I told her, why in your city can you have a requirement that says you have to live in the district for a year, but in our city we can't. We have to allow Mike Rios to be able to move from district to district,
from prison
and
to
run
prison,
wherever the hell he wants, whenever the hell he wants. That's okay here, but on that side of the freeway, it's better. They had 16 articles saying what a great thing it was. They had a charter that was reviewed every 6 years, and they could make changes in how they were governed. In a general law city, the state tells you how to do it, and you can't change it. It's okay over there. They're intellectual. They have the ability. They're smart over there. Over here, the press enterprise would have you believe that we're not smart enough to put our pants on in the morning, so therefore we shouldn't be allowed to decide how we govern ourselves. So we need the charter. We absolutely need the charter.
What does that require?
Pardon?
What does that require?
Well, it requires, you look at, there's 2 ways. There's a, you know, they said, it was interesting. There's no groundswell for the charter. And in the same paper, they said there's a group of citizens who pulled the papers to put a charter initiative on. How can you say there's no groundswell when you report in the same issue that that there's 2 groups now trying to form a charter? Okay, so how you do it, there's 2 ways to do charter. You can do this charter commission, which is trying to be formed. They vote to form a charter commission. They elect the members. They take a long and arduous process, and it's like the camel. It's a horse by a committee. It probably doesn't have a lot of success, but I fully endorse it. These guys want to do it. I'm behind them. Richard Stewart poo-pooed it the other day, and you know the truth of the matter is we should be endorsing it. And I told them, if you guys are successful, I want to run and I want to be on your committee. We should be thankful that people are doing this.
Okay, so how can we help?
Well, you can help by being vocal at every council meeting, writing, coming to the council meeting, speaking for the charter. The other way is for the city council to vote to form a charter subcommittee and write the charter and then put it before the electors. That is what we have already done. So we will be meeting every week, and we will do a chapter of the charter a week. It will be reviewed by, I'm going to get a committee. Marshall, I was going to ask you to be on it. We're going to get people throughout the community to look at our work before we show it to anyone. We're going to take the input. I'm gonna ask Mayor Loveridge over in Riverside to look at it. I don't know if he'll agree. But I will get people. If he doesn't, we'll find other people. And then they will take a look at it. And then what will happen is that we will give it to the city attorney to put into kind of a first draft. And we have a workable city attorney.
Okay, that's good.
Suzanne Bryant, the acting city attorney, which in my opinion will be the city attorney if I can muster the votes to do that, which I think I can. She has earned the job. She found out, quite frankly, that she'd been doing the job for 6 years and didn't know it and wasn't being paid for it. If you know what I mean. So, you know, her workload got easier when she became.
got paid for it.
Yeah. Well, she hasn't been paid for it yet, but she will. So the bottom line is, she will then draft it, and it will go to a study session, televised study session, where everybody can comment. And then once it goes to the study session, the council will adopt that chapter. And then we'll work our way through until we have a final charter. Then we'll do a series of study sessions on the complete charter. And then it will go on the ballot in 2014. And you guys will have the choice to decide whether or not to have a charter city or not. Full-time elected mayor, term limits will be a part of it. You know, I don't know if you know it or not, but we had a study session. The first thing I did was have a weekend study session where we, as a council, decided what we're going to do. We have a checklist, and very soon the checklist will be on a big board and put in the chamber council, and we are going to check off what we promised as we do it. Charter is top. Charter with term limits. Charter with a citywide elected mayor. And so that's what we're doing in that regard.
What are we doing to keep the smaller entrepreneur businesses open? Because I see a lot of them going out of business. Do the city promote them?
That's why we need a stronger chamber, number one, to be your advocate, to be the small business advocate. Number two, you know, we are starting to put some emphasis on it, and in this, one of the things in this original study session we did back in February, we added was business incubation, small business incubation. I really haven't had time to put the spotlight on it yet with the city people. They're in budget time, and you won't see a lot of things happen until we get this budget put to bed in March. But that is on the agenda, to focus on small businesses.
I think that would bring a lot more money into the city of Moreno Valley. I mean,
Yeah, and let me tell you how important.
We have to invest like any other business.
Yeah. And let me tell you how important it is. It's sales tax driven. So one of the largest sales tax producers in this city is a Chevron gas station on the East End. So it doesn't matter, you know, they say, well, what's it, people poo-poo that the economic development guy is out there opening restaurants and gas stations. Well, that brings tons of money to our city.
That's right.
So we have to start looking at these small businesses as the #1 source of incremental tax revenue. Anything else? Boy, I could wear it. Listen, go ahead.
It was mentioned about shopping Moreno Valley. What type of projection is out there to bring stores and we go to other cities to go to restaurants, we go to hospitality, Puente Hills, Victoria Gardens.
You know, it's a multifaceted problem.
Albertsons is close. What's out there?
It's a multifaceted problem, and it starts out with this. People have to feel safe where they shop.
Yeah.
And that perception thing that you talked about needs to be changed. You know, it's just a very complicated thing. We need to have schools that people will send their children to so that they'll move their business here. The city has to be out there welcoming them, taking down the red tape, lowering the fees, making things accessible. And we have lowered the fees, and one of the first things we did was lower the diff. And I know I'm talking in government acronyms, and I hate them. But, you know, that's the fee that you charge incoming businesses for the infrastructure that's going to be needed as their share of infrastructure expenses. So we've lowered that. We're lowering the fees, and we're trying to make it easier for people to get in. It's hard to do when you're on short staff, but we'll get there because we'll start outsourcing to private enterprise. It's absolutely ridiculous that we send all our business to Riverside at Webb Associates. Just look at how many contracts they get. And Wildan in Orange County. We don't have a civil engineering firm in this city because we wouldn't give them a contract if they asked for one. So we need to change that attitude at City Hall. And we need to start spending every dime the city can in our city.
That's right, that's right, starts here.
Let's all give Tom a big
Thank you.
hand.
Thank you for the